Howdy folks, I'm Luke, more commonly known as Thunderhead 289, and welcome to a beautiful central Iowa summer's day. It's a Saturday morning, getting the dogs out here running before the heat of the day so they can be out and enjoy themselves before it gets up to 95, 100 degrees or so. But anyway, with them out here today, and I figured I'd just take a moment here to make some carburetor tuning videos with you guys. So anyway, we're going to go over some of the initial settings and basic setup of a carburetor, and it doesn't matter, a Holley, Edelbrock. The carburetor I have with me today is, in particular, is a Summit 600 vacuum secondary, but you know, these same concepts work for any carburetor that you will use for the most part, especially 4 barrels. So without further ado, we'll jump in and look at what we do here to set these up. But just really quick, this is my 74 F100. It's my daily driver. It has a 94 stock Bronco 302 up front, which is a roller engine in 94 with the 351 firing order. And it's been converted to carburation, and it has a T5 5-speed behind it and the stock 370 rear gears that came with a inline 6 truck. But anyway, this is again my daily driver. Does pretty good. And everything I'm about to tell you here is how I set up my own carburetors, and you know, rain, shine, 70 degrees, 100 degrees, they all seem to run pretty good. So today I'm going to share some of that knowledge with you, and we're just going to jump right in. So before we get too far in here, the biggest thing I want to point out with carburetors is, of course, they don't self-adjust. So with all of your settings and tuning, the biggest item is consistent inputs, and I've mentioned this in numerous other videos, but if you can keep your fuel temp going into the carburetor the same, the air temp relatively the same, and tune everything accordingly, it's going to return a pretty good tune for you and do pretty well. So what I've done with this truck is it has a full fuel return line. It no longer has a mechanical pump, and it's an electric pump, so it's always cycling the fuel. It doesn't vapor lock. It has a carb spacer on it, and just, you know, a lot of little simple things to help keep everything nice and consistent. So when you have heat soak, a lot of times that'll mess with your air fuel ratio and just kind of wreak some havoc on your carburetor tune overall. Mostly down low on the idle side, and you know, that's where most folks struggle rather, is when it gets hot out, they start to have issues. So again, I drive this rain, shine, it's going to be 100 degrees today and it runs just fine. So these are just some of the things to look at. Now on the other hand, another great tuning tool, or a couple of great tuning tools rather, are a wideband O2 gauge and a vacuum gauge. So with these, you can see with the vacuum gauge where different carburetor events are coming in. You can see when the power valve would be opening up. And of course with the wideband O2 gauge, it's kind of cheating where you can see your air fuel ratio all the time, and it really aids in tuning carburetors, especially if you aren't very proficient in doing it. Now I do have videos over all of that, and I'll leave the links to those, and I recommend checking them out because they have all the parts links to do everything I've done to this, and believe me, this is a very budget setup. So I encourage you to go check those out. So anyway, jumping in here, let's grab our carburetor, and we're just again going to talk about some of the basic initial adjustments that you're going to make to a carburetor that will really help it to run how it's supposed to, and all the carburetor dynamics are going to function correctly. All right, so we got the carburetor flipped over here, and we're going to take a look at the idle circuit and how to set that up properly. But one thing that I really want to make mention of, and I really want to stick in your mind, is that all the circuits of a carburetor are compounding. So the idle circuit, based on that adjustment, it will affect your jetting, and your jetting is going to affect your power valve, and all that's going to affect your secondaries, and it's all has compounding effects through the circuit. So you want to start and get the idle circuit correct first, and then move on through the accelerator pump and all those other items, because if you mess one up, what you'll end up doing is when you get to the jets, you'll be band-aiding a problem that you have at idle with the jet circuit, and that's really not what you want to do. And again, you know, you're just going to be lacking in overall performance on your carburetor, just leaving some performance on the table rather. So and this isn't rocket science here, this is all very easy stuff, especially if I'm able to do this, you guys are too. So This is a very easy concept, and basically getting into it here finally, what I work off of on my idle circuit is something called the transfer slot. So let me open our butterflies on our carburetor here. You can kind of see this distortion in the carbon on the underside of this old carburetor, and that's coming down from what are called the transfer slots. Now these handle some of your off idle transition of your carburetor when you go from idle into your main jet circuit, and if these are misadjusted, you tend to have a lean spot, and if there's too much of them opened up, which is a very typical thing, and I tune a lot of folks' carburetors, and a lot of it you can just clean up by simply doing this. Throttle response will be extremely better. A whole bunch of stuff that people chase with accelerator pumps and pump cams and you know, all of that stuff can be remedied by doing this one simple thing. So basically, the ideology that I work off of is I set my transfer slots to a square. And this is not specific to me. You can poke around the internet, you know, so a lot of old timers have this same ideology. So if you set these to a square, the beauty of this is you have a little bit of vacuum signal at idle, so when you do crack the throttle, you already have vacuum signal there and fuel is already flowing, so your response is very quick. So anyway, now what you'll have happen is you'll say, well, Luke, when I put my carburetor on and have my transfer slots adjusted the way you told me, the engine doesn't want to idle. It idles too low. Well, this is where our ignition timing comes in. Now, carburation and ignition timing is all a balance, to no surprise. So what you're going to want to do is loosen your hold down on your distributor, and a timing light's pretty handy here so you don't get too crazy, but you're going to want to advance your ignition timing until you have a desirable idle RPM with your transfer slot set to a square. Now, if you're going to idle above 700 or 800 RPM or so, you know, you get a little bit more wiggle room where I would say you can start opening up your throttle blade ever so slightly. But, you know, really you shouldn't have to open it up any more than a half turn from this squared off point. So with that, you're going to want to run ported vacuum, so you're not pulling vacuum when you are at idle. So, you know, there's a lot of folks that go back and forth between manifold and ported vacuum, and I do as well. But as far as a universal concept in carburetor tuning, it's just much easier to run ported vacuum, which means you're not adding in vacuum advance from your vacuum canister when you're at idle. So on a Holley, this being a Summit, it's not the exact same, but on the metering block, there's a port on the side of that metering block, and that's the port you want to hook your vacuum advance to. And really the purpose of vacuum advance when you're going down the road is it just accounts for all your light throttle situations where, you know, your throttle's not very far open, you're not getting a very full cylinder charge, it's not very dense, so your burn time on that mixture is a lot slower. So vacuum advance when you're cruising will fire that mixture a little bit sooner, so it burns at the right time and you can get the most power out of that burn. So, and of course when you step on the throttle, vacuum advance is factored out, your throttle's more open, you have a denser fuel charge, and you're on your mechanical timing, and you need less timing to burn that at the right time. Again, ideally you want to burn the mixture right when the piston is starting its downward stroke on the cylinder, and that's how you make the most power that you possibly can. So anyway, all that aside, that's pretty much the concept I work off of here. So this particular truck runs about 14 degrees of initial timing or so, and it's on ported vacuum, and being a stock engine, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot of timing to do this, but this is on the underside of that carb, this is what my transfer slots look like. So anyway, and again, I've driven this thing for miles and miles and miles this year. It went all the way through Power Tour, 3,300 miles or so without a hitch, problem free. And then once you have this dialed in, you can proceed to move through the rest of your carburetor circuits. So like your accelerator pumps, your jets and everything. So if you don't do this to start out with, again, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to be band-aiding the other circuits to get everything right. So anyway, with that, I think that'll do it for the video today. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comment below. And then I also do run a Facebook page that's a Thunderhead 289 Carb and Engine how-to forum, or can't even remember the name of my own Facebook group. But if you search Thunderhead 289 on Facebook, you'll find it, and it's kind of got that old style forum flavor where we go through and help people through their issues, and we've helped a lot of folks there. So anyway, with that, I'm gonna get back to running around here and throwing the ball for the dogs. We'll catch you guys later. Wait, hey, come on. Hey. Sit.